éclat de rire. Voilà, voilà. Yeah, it does work. It does work.
It's continental.
Exactly. Well, Paul, my first question will go to you, obviously, because for the first time you directed from a script you actually wrote. And even though I know many of your fans will expect many twists and all that, and we have a James Bond style opening, so it seems to say it all. But I wanted to know where you got this love and passion for spy movies or for the spy genre.
I just have always loved them because they're exciting, they're action-packed, but they're also very stylish, and I love the international travel aspect of it. But for me also, it just felt like the perfect arena to do a comedy, and not a spoof. We've seen plenty of Johnny Englishes and Austin Powers, and I think those are very funny, but I didn't have any desire to do that. I've always wanted to make a spy movie, but I do comedy, and so I thought, well, how can I make a real spy movie and still make it funny? And it's all about human interaction. It's about the character being kind of a fish out of water. We're not meeting somebody who is the top of their game, but somebody who has a skill set that they've been told doesn't work, and that they've been kind of manipulated and not doing it. And then the fact that that person gets to go out in the field and prove themselves of what they always knew they could do, that's exciting, because then there's comedy that comes out of that as she figures it out. She's not dumb, she's not bumbling, she's just relearning her skills, and out of that becomes the comedy.
Well, actually, you make a hell of a spy, lady, if I may say so, and you kick ass like no spy I've seen. How important was it, in particular, because I know, this is really also a sort of feminist film, and I know you fight for that. How important was it not to be a dumb, but on the contrary, to be a very smart woman relying on her wits to be a great spy?
It was incredibly important. It's the first question I asked Paul when I called him right after I begged him to do it. My first question was, will she always be smart? Will she stay incredibly smart, incredibly capable, and strong in that way? And he said, absolutely. It's really the only way it will work. And I think that's important. There are a lot of women that are agents and a lot of women that are spies, and they're doing that job. And I certainly didn't want to try to dumb down. I think it would damage the whole thing. What's interesting is that job is rather amazing. So to dumb it down would really be chipping away at a great character.
In my research on writing the movie, I actually found out that it's a fact that women actually make better spies than men, because of the fact that real spy work is about interaction, it's about gaining the trust of the person you're trying to either infiltrate or get to your side, and being able to read people. And so it just seems to be a skill set that the women are actually better at, so they definitely deserve their own movie.
Yes, sorry, Jason, she's better than you are. Come on. You play a sort of inept, say, agent, and funny enough, I know that Paul wrote the script with you in mind, and
That's
not
right.
Melissa, actually.
With a gun to his head.
He wouldn't leave my house.
Exactly.
3 weeks and he finished it rather quickly.
Actually, it's interesting because you see, I remember, a long time ago, but when you did the Crank movies where you were absolutely hilarious, did it remind you of those times where you were not considered an action persona in the movie industry? This is working. Yeah, this was a great relief for me to do something that wasn't contained and restricted, and you could pump him up to whatever level that you wanted to get him to. And there's a lot of fun to be had when you're doing that kind of thing. It's. I think Rick Ford is such a good character. When Paul was describing him to me, I didn't want to play like an idiot, just some useless spy that couldn't do anything. Because I think that would have just been too sort of on the nose, just me being in a comedy and then just falling on my face every 5 minutes. So I think Rick Ford is a very strong, capable spy. And obviously he tells everybody that. But I think his compass is a little bit off. He just turns up at the wrong time, he's in the wrong place all the time. He's just the worst card player. And I think, it's an interesting character because he is good, but he's just he's just missing something that's one of the most key ingredients to make a good spy.
Well, I always see it as being that Rick Ford he's a very good agent who has made a couple of very crucially bad decisions right when we first meet him. First he's quit and he's taken his earpiece person out of his ear, so he doesn't have that extra perspective, and then he's so driven crazy by the fact that somebody he thinks is his inferior is doing his job that he starts to make very bad decisions. So in another situation, Rick Ford is aces.
Yeah, in another situation, right? Well, let's hear your question now, and you better be Ace's questions, all right? First question, where would it be? All right, we have the mic here. Please stand up so that we see you.
Hello, thanks for the movie. Thanks for being here. Je vais poser la question en français pour que tout le monde comprenne. Qu'est-ce que vous avez ajouté dans votre personnage plutôt, est-ce que ça a été écrit complètement comme ça ou complètement fou? Est-ce que vous avez rajouté une grosse couche par-dessus?
C'est une question pour Jason?
Pour tout le monde.
Pour tout le monde.
Pour tout le monde.
All right, well, did you, when you were actually playing your characters, did you add like extra layers, extra craziness in your characters as you were fleshing them out, so to speak?
To me, yeah, extra layers. I mean, I had enough to think about with what Paul was writing on these bloody post-it notes. You know, you create with Paul or what kind of a character you're going to play, and you know, I think Paul sort of cherry-picked some of the good little elements out of maybe a couple of other films I've done. Like, I know Paul liked Crank, so there's probably, you know, an element of the lunacy was sort of transported into it. Yeah, I mean, you try and get it to be something, you know, bigger and better than what you've done before, always.
What about you, Melissa? What did you add to your already fantastic character?
It was when I first read it on the page, she was really fantastically three-dimensional and great, and I think mine was always trying to balance out her skill level with her lack of confidence. Trying to make sure, and I think Paul and I talked about that a lot. So it was more nuancing that stuff. I added a lot of wigs. I love me a wig. God help me, I do. So it was. I mean, I think that's part of the fun of building these things. Every time it's like you talk about everything and try to create it beforehand, but even on the day you are constantly reevaluating and kind of rejudging where your character is at that level, and Paul's a great one to do that with. He's always game to actually think about, like, you know, has it changed, and let's look at it.
Well, I mean, for me, it's just, you know, we write and we talk about this stuff endlessly before we start because we want to have it in our head, but the minute you get to the set, that's when it comes alive. And I think a lot of directors fall down, especially writer-directors, because they become so precious about the words. It's like, no, just say it like that. To me, it's like, now it's coming out of two people's mouths who are interacting in an environment they haven't acted in before. That's when you go like, oh wait, let's try this, and I see this, and this interaction with this, and the way that they're coming up against each other, that's where it starts to come to life. And the idea that you work for years to try to get a movie made, and then you get to the set and you rush through it in 2 hours, is a crime. You know, when you have these amazingly talented people. I mean, Melissa's being modest. She came up with so many of her jokes on her own. Half the time she was like, it's just like, that would come out and it's like, oh, I always know when her funniest joke is coming because she'll start to say something terrible and then she'll stop and go like, I can't say that, it's too mean. It's like, you better say it. That's where the line, you fucked that monster once, you just drop the mic and walk out came from.
And then I think once Paul cut, I was like, I'm so sorry, Rose. I'm so sorry.
Well, that's all Melissa does is apologize.
I'd like to destroy them.
I'd like to add as well, you know, I think when you start reading the words, the stuff that Paul writes, it kind of, you know, you create the character from the words. You know, it's not like, okay, I want to play this kind of guy and then you'll write about this character. It's like, these are the words, and you start to recognise what type of a chap would say these things.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a bit of a reversed sort of building.
And I like that. I like that in the moment kind of discovery of new things, because then it happens the first time on camera, and so it's like lightning in a bottle. You just have this fresh feel, as opposed to we rehearse the hell out of it and then we get on stage and just recite lines.
Yeah, because I think that whole thing, even with my character with Jason's character, I knew that they were at odds, but I don't think it was until we were filming it that it was like, oh, it's really personally, like, he personally hates her, and I think that changed like how you play that changed, at least for me, the whole way we played all of our scenes, especially in the casino. I was like, oh, we are going at it. Like he's personally against me. So like it made me play it a whole different way, that's the whole fun of it. You get pushed into like a different level.
Question A ici, et ensuite nous donnons la parole là-bas.
Bonjour, hello Melissa, Paul and Jason. Alors ma question en français également, c'est pour Jason et Melissa. En fait, dans ce film, on a l'impression que tous les deux, vous avez des rôles qui sont complètement à l'envers de ce que vous avez fait dans votre carrière. Melissa, on a l'impression que vous êtes un petit peu un Colin Firth de Kingsman, cascadeuse, action, et Jason, à l'encontre de tout ce qu'on a vu, parce que voilà, d'habitude vous êtes le badass, un petit peu drôle, mais très badass. Est-ce que c'est des choses que vous voulez faire maintenant dans votre carrière, aller à l'encontre en fait des rôles qu'on vous connaît et voilà, changer un peu plus, donner plus de nouveautés?
Well, obviously, this question for both you, Melissa and Jason. I mean, it feels that in the parts that Paul wrote for you, actually, you're 100% different from your previous parts. You are kicking ass, and he is making almost like a departure, Jason, from all these other things. Was it intentional, like, to break away from the parts that usually people see you taking on?
Not for me. I mean, it was a delight that it was, but I just go, it was such a great character. And the second I started reading her, I loved her from about page 4. I was like, I'm in. And then when I got to watch her take such a huge arc within that movie, I just loved the character. And then it happened to be very different for me. So that was like the greatest bonus at all. But it is not that often you get to read a really well-rounded, three-dimensional, complicated, flawed woman. So I love that.
What about you, Jason?
Yeah, it wasn't a calculated decision for my career. I really need to do something, different. You just want to be in a great film, and that's the motivation. And it's hard to come into a comedy with the kind of sort of a reputation and keep doing the same thing. You've got to keep him efficient because people have sort of remember you for that, but find a way to make him, fall on his face a little bit. Not literally, but you've got to find the humour in a capable man. And I think that's a really tricky thing. So I thought it'd be interesting because of that.
Question là-bas.
Oui, une question à nos trois invités. Quel est le timing le plus compliqué, le timing de la comédie ou le timing de l'action?
Yeah, it's this question for the three of you from different viewpoints, but what's the most difficult, toughest timing? The comedy timing, or on the contrary, the action timing?
If I can just answer directorially, the hard thing is that both have to be equal. I didn't want the action to not be fun and funny, but I also didn't want it to be, total mayhem. But also with the comedy part, I wanted it to be funny, but not in a way that subverted the story and the stakes and the danger. And so, that's. But then you're just really mostly dependent upon your actors because they're the ones that are going to tonally sell it. If Jason had tried to be like, I'm going to be funny now, that part wouldn't have worked. And if Melissa had, done what she never does, which is, I don't know, just try to be too broad with it, which you don't even just say the fucking lines. Then it wouldn't work. So, but it's the director's job is all about tone. Like if we fluctuate from the tone at all, that's why a lot of comedies you watch, even if you're into it, then something happens and you're like, well, that is supposed to be funny, but now you blew the whole all the rules of the game. Then we failed. So.
What about both of you? What was the toughest, you thought? Comic timing or action timing?
I think they're both. It's like you said, it's hard to get a judge on both of those. They're both very different, and I think that I just rely on the director Paul here for the timing of everything, and you get in the rhythm with, when you're playing across from each other, you get it kind of the rhythm sort of finds itself, and the timing therefore is handled with what's happening between the two of you. So I don't think I don't have a conscious sort of feeling about what's happening. It's just sort of going off, and it just takes care of it, and then you get a giggle from the director. I think you've done the right thing.
That's right. Actually, you were talking about the rhythms. How did you rehearse, for instance, to find the right rhythms, whether action or comedy, the two of you, or not at all?
No, I think part of what works about it so well is that it's spontaneous. I think we were constantly trying to surprise each other, or surprise the rest of the cast, not with, completely new, different stories, but just enough so it kind of keeps everyone a little thrown off. And then you've said something to whoever you're with that they don't expect, and then they have to respond. And now you're actually getting on film a completely spontaneous scene and moment that has never happened again. No one's rehearsed it, no one's practiced a way to say it. And it makes it really exciting. And I think a little bit of that energy always comes through.
Question. Là-bas, micro, où est-il? Ah, ici.
Bonsoir, merci d'être là, merci pour le film, j'ai beaucoup ri. Alors j'ai deux questions par rapport au lieu de tournage. La première question, elle est pour Paul. On voyage énormément dans le film. On se rend compte qu'il y a une ville qui craint un peu, et qui est montrée en tout cas de manière très craigneuse, c'est Paris. Donc j'aurais aimé savoir pourquoi. Et la question, deuxième question plus collégiale, c'est où est-ce que ça a été le plus sympa à tourner pour toute l'équipe?
Well, now we're talking about shooting locations.
Oh, I knew I was going to take heat for this.
Yes, Paul. Apparently you were not that kind to Paris.
Oh.
Why that?
Oh wait, was it the blowjob on the street? That's
Potentially to you, but
Have you not been to that neighborhood?
Well, obviously you have.
Paris is for lovers.
To shoot,
lovers of oral sex.
To
Exactly.
film. But actually, could be said, what location was the coolest, the most fun, the most interesting to shoot?
Well, I mean, with the fact I've done this now twice in my career. I've written a movie that's very international in all the places that I love, and then they go, okay, you're going to make the movie, but you have to shoot it in Eastern Europe. It's like, okay. So, but, the first one I had to do was Bulgaria, so that was a little tougher. But then this was Budapest, which we knew we had to shoot in for tax reasons, but originally the whole second half of the movie was supposed to take place in Paris, thinking I could shoot here, and then I couldn't because of money reasons. And so when I got there, I thought, well, Budapest is such a great place, why don't I just showcase Budapest? We had to do a little section in Paris, which I apologize. I know there's not one of those things on the side of the Seine, the big mirrored building. And also, if you watch the movie closely, you'll notice that the Eiffel Tower is on both sides of the Seine.